So the DCEU is officially over now that Aquaman 2 has released, which means we now have 15 films for this dysfunctional mess of a franchise. I'm going to be ranking all 15 films, spoilers ahead, and with that all out of the way.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look and you'll see into your imagination.
Coming in number 15, Justice League. The Justice League version that came out in 2017 that was directed by Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon. Well, it was more like Zack Snyder completed the film and Warner Brothers fired Zack Snyder and used the death of his daughter as an excuse to fire him, and then they replaced him with this jackass. And the whole behind the scenes of how everything played out was very scummy. And not just that, we were deprived of a better Justice League film and a better vision of the franchise. Instead, now we have a franchise that went into like 30 different directions, and the last film is Aquaman 2. It's a mess of a franchise. It's because of the executives, not because of the director's visions. The executives kept screwing around with the director's visions and whoever was in charge of the DCEU. We had like 20 different people in charge of the DCEU, and I'm just glad that it's over, and hopefully the DCEU, run by James Gunn and Peter Safran, can make a cohesive universe, but hopefully the Warner Brothers executives don't mess with their vision as well. But this film, Justice League, was just a mess. It makes all the other films make no sense. It just doesn't fit into the DCEU that was established before. Warner Brothers was like, okay, we need to just make our film into an MCU comedy blockbuster film, even though it doesn't fit into our universe, and it's just a bad movie. It really is. It turns the characters into jokes. Every character is literally a joke. It doesn't fit into the characters that they've turned into jokes. Like Batman making jokes, it comes off as cringe. Ben Affleck, especially coming from Ben Affleck, it just doesn't work. It doesn't fit. It comes off as cringe. Not every character needs to sound the same and make stupid quippy jokes. I could go on, and it's not just because of the way they got rid of Zack Snyder. As for the reason why this is last on the list, in my opinion, this is one of the worst superhero movies of all time. All the characters don't feel like they're characters from the comics and from the previous movies. The jokes were not funny. It feels like two people directed a movie with two different visions. It doesn't work. The color grading doesn't work. The editing was terrible. The reshoots were terrible. The mustache was terrible. An abomination, quite frankly. And this movie is just an abomination to filmmaking, and it's just an abomination to the superhero genre, which is why it's last on my list. One of the worst superhero movies I ever watched, and I just want to rip my eyes out just thinking of this movie because it's just horrible to look at, and it's a tough movie to watch. Coming in number 14, Aquaman 2. This movie is just really dumb. It's really bad. I don't like the first Aquaman movie, and this movie is just the first movie, but worse. The second movie has a worse plot, and the writing's just worse from the first movie. I think Jason Momoa was miscast, and I'm not the biggest fan of the characterization of Aquaman in the DCEU. I actually do like the interpretation of Aquaman in the Zack Snyder's Justice League film. Now, I still prefer like the traditional Aquaman from the comics. I know people think Aquaman's corny and needed a revamp, similar to like Thor, but I disagree with that. Like to me, what they did with Aquaman in the DCEU is what they did with Thor in the MCU. It's just both really bad, wild, different takes from the comics, and I just not a big fan of them in my opinion. I feel like what they should do with Aquaman, if they want to change the character a bit, make him similar to like a Percy Jackson type of character. Not make him super young or anything, but maybe make him a bit more relatable in some way, instead of making him into some surfer bro. But that's just my opinion, and again, Aquaman 2, really bad. Coming in number 13, Birds of Prey. The only positives in this movie is Harley Quinn, Black Mask, played by Ewan McGregor, did a great job, the directing, and the action. Everything else is bad, especially the writing. What they do with the other characters in this movie, like Black Canary and Huntress, is just lame. Comedy was mostly cringe in my opinion, but comedy is subjective, so keep that in mind. And the film was just a waste of time. Coming in number 12, Black Adam. The best way to sum up this movie is just, it's such a stupid and forgettable film. The things I remember about the movie is just stupid. It's just so generic that it becomes forgettable. They turned Black Adam to basically a superhero. It's just the way they did everything is just so generic, so corny. The kid with the skateboard was corny in the movie, and it's just a really dumb movie. It has some highlights. The music is also, again, very generic and very like pop music, and the action is pretty decent, at least. I feel like they could have done something really cool with a Black Adam movie. Instead, it just feels like one of Rock's other generic movies. It also sucks that we're never going to see Black Adam pair up with the DCEU's Shazam, because I do like that character in that version of Shazam. But, you know, it just is what it is. Such a missed opportunity. Coming in number 11, Aquaman. I'm not a fan of this movie. Best way to sum this movie up is just it's really dumb. Not the worst thing in the world, not one of the worst superhero movies of all time. And it's somewhat entertaining. It's like a dumb popcorn movie. Just turn your brain off and you can enjoy it. At least that's how I view this movie. I don't really see anything that great in it or that good. Again, I'm not a big fan of Aquaman's characterization in this movie from the comics. I just hope moving forward we get a more comic accurate Aquaman in the DCU. But yeah, this movie, just really dumb. Not the worst thing in the world though. Coming in number 10, Wonder Woman 84. Now, I don't feel this movie is that bad. I feel like this movie gets a little overhated. And some people all of a sudden are discrediting Patty Jenkins. I think she still is a pretty good director in the movie industry. This movie sure does have an amount of plot holes and some character inconsistencies. Terrible CGI for sure. But this movie kind of is a product of where it takes place in it. Like, it feels like an 80s movie in some ways. So I do like the 80s feel that this movie has. Also kind of reminds me a bit of like the Wonder Woman TV show, with the way it feels like feels like it comes from the 80s. And again, I don't feel like it's the worst thing ever. I think like it's an okay movie with some stupid cringe moments. Also, Pedro Pascal, I like this character in the movie. He kind of came off as sympathetic in some ways. And the whole thing that they had with his son, I think all that was done really well. The thing with the cheetah character, though, in Wonder Woman 84 was just bad. It was bad. The CGI on the cheetah character was just bad. Coming in at number 9, Suicide Squad. Another movie where I feel like it gets too much hate. Like, people really hate on this movie. I see some reasons why, because some people believe they should show the real version of the movie, the real cut that wasn't meddled with by Warner Brothers. Also, the way they handled some characters wasn't the best as well. The editing was really bad at times for some people. I felt like the editing was alright. But yeah, I find this film to just be an okay film. I like the characters that aren't the Joker. The Joker is terrible in this movie, probably the worst Joker we ever got. And what the hell is up with that purple leather jacket? Like, what a joke. No pun intended, but seriously, it's just terrible. And the teeth, don't even get me started. But yeah, I think Suicide Squad's okay. I was really shocked when people hated on the movie when it first came out, and then I thought maybe I'll grow up and I'll start to hate the movie. But no, I've always found this movie to be okay, and it's rewatchable and solid entertainment with likable characters. Coming in number 8, Shazam 2. Another film where I feel like it's okay. The cast from the first movie's back, and they're great again, as always, especially Zachary Levi and Adam Brody. The fact that we're seeing Chuck and Seth from the OC in a superhero movie is just like a crossover between two actors I never knew I needed, but it just needed to happen. It just works. I hope they come back in like other movies outside of DCEU in the future. Like, I just want to see them in another superhero project, just the two of them. But besides that, this movie is just okay. It's not as good as the first movie, unfortunately. Also, the villains aren't that great. They're nowhere near as good from the villains from the first movie. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit biased towards the director of this movie and the first movie, David F. Sandberg. He is an inspiration to me, and I think he could be an inspiration for other directors as well, other people that want to be in the film industry, like a guy who just started off of YouTube, then got a popular short film, won in like a contest, and now he's like directing blockbuster movies. Like, that's a dream for every director. The fact that he started off on YouTube is just very inspiring, and I am a bit biased towards him. I think he is a good director who deserves more work, and I recommend checking out his YouTube channel, Pony Smasher. He gives out good advice for like the film industry. He gives out interesting things behind the scenes, and his videos are pretty cool as well. So yeah, I might be a bit biased, but I also think the movie's just genuinely okay. Coming in number 7, Batman v Superman. When it comes to this movie, people feel very passionately like two different ways about this movie. They either love or hate this film, and for some people there's no in between. But for me, I'm right down the middle. I think this movie is okay, and I promise this is the last DCEU movie where I feel it's just okay. Also, when I think of this movie, I think of the Ultimate Edition, which is a much better film that adds a lot of things that were missing from the original cut that made the movie better. Also, well, they also add some other things too, like they had blood when Batman killed people. They really wanted to emphasize Batman killing people in this movie. Not a big fan of that, but you know, that's just the way this universe is set up, so I just kind of accepted that. Performance of Ben Affleck as Batman in this movie was really great. Love the action scenes with Batman in this movie. Also loved like the stuff with Clark Kent, trying to figure out how the Batman is. I like those reporting scenes with Clark Kent in this movie. I thought that was pretty good. Lois Lane pretty good in this movie. I loved seeing the Trinity fight against Doomsday. Doomsday himself sucked, but I liked seeing the Trinity interact with each other. It was a good introduction to Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, all like working together. Really disliked Lex Luthor in this movie, and I disliked the whole Martha scene. I thought that was just dumb. Like, who screams out Martha instead of saying their mom? Why did Bruce like, why'd you say that name? Why'd you say that name? Like, it's stupidity. It's a really dumb scene. So yeah, I feel this movie is just okay. Very high okay, because there's a lot of good moments, bad moments, some mediocre moments. Not a fan of Lex Luthor and Doomsday. Also, I feel like they shouldn't have done the death of Superman in his second movie, but I do like the way it worked out with Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think it was good having the death of Superman in this movie. I feel like it was a good thing for the Justice League movie, Zack Snyder's version, not the abomination that is Justice League's version. So I view the death of Superman much better now because of the way he was handled in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Also, the questions like this movie asks, like about like gods coming to, like, what if God, like Superman's God, like him being viewed as that, and like what if he came to Earth, and the way that the public view him, and like all the positives and negatives with the way they view him, and the way they handle the aftermath of Man of Steel. I feel like all that stuff was pretty good too. I would like to highlight that as well. But yeah, an okay movie, enjoyable watch. Some people love this movie, some people hate it. I'm like right down the middle, maybe a little closer to more than just okay. I think it's just high okay in my opinion. Coming in number 6, Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now for me, I feel like Zack Snyder's Justice League is pretty damn good. It's like a 8 out of 10, or very close to an 8 out of 10. I think for me it's like a 7.8 out of 10, very close to an 8. I think the biggest thing that knocks this film down for me a bit is the runtime, and I know it's just Zack Snyder's entire movie, everything included. And this would probably bump up a bit if this movie was 2.5 hours instead of being 4 hours. And I get it, it's like Zack Snyder's complete vision of this movie. Some scenes are just really drawn out, and I think it really needed to be cut down, like a lot of different scenes. Also, I feel like the writing and the pacing have some issues as well. But I think this could have been a really solid start to what could have been a great trilogy. I hope one day we get to see what Zack Snyder could eventually do with a second and third Justice League movie, or however many other movies he wanted to do with this universe. In my headcanon, this is the official Justice League movie of the DCEU, and not that abomination Justice League movie. But yeah, I wish this was the original Justice League movie that we got from the start. Also love that Flash scene in this movie. That's probably the best part of the movie, where he travels back in time, and it's just a really great scene. And I love the music for the Flash in this movie too. The music is hit or miss throughout the movie, but that Flash scene was just great. One of the best superhero moments in my opinion. Coming in number 5, The Flash. Now this is another movie where it's like pretty divided between people. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people think it's just bad because of certain behind the scenes issues with certain actors, mainly Ezra Miller. But excluding all that, I feel The Flash is pretty good for many different reasons. I feel like this movie has heart, which I appreciate. It was great seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman. Like, the fact that people don't talk about that aspect of this movie more is just baffling to me. I love Michael Keaton as Batman. Michael Keaton as an actor is great, but him as Batman is just phenomenal. It was just so satisfying seeing him back as Batman, and he did one hell of a job. It was also cool seeing Batman and Wonder Woman one last time, Ben Affleck's Batman and Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman one last time in this movie. Felt like they were pretty good in this movie when they were there. Supergirl was alright in this movie, kind of bland in my opinion, but you know, I thought she was alright. She had some decent moments. I liked Barry in this movie, not the one that came from the past, the present day Barry. I did like him. Don't feel like he is the character of the Flash, the Barry Allen Flash at all. To me, he still feels like Bart Allen, especially that younger version of himself. That was pretty annoying, but I did like that twist with the younger Barry Allen being the villain of the movie, and he kept on trying to save things over and over and over again, and it just kept on getting things worse and worse. And all those cameos were pretty cool too. A little weird, but I thought some of the cameos were pretty cool. I wish they were actually in the movie though. I thought this movie really would have benefited from having a Grant Gustin in the movie, him as the Flash, and maybe other characters. I think this movie had the opportunity to have multiple Flashes in this movie, but missed opportunity. But it was still cool seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman and all the quick cameos we saw, I guess. The weird thing is, all the cameos that we saw were mainly Superman cameos. It was kind of weird, like out of all the cameos to see, they were all mainly Superman, especially that Nicolas Cage Superman, which was pretty cool. I wish he was actually in the movie as Superman, but seeing him for that quick second, I guess, was cool. And yeah, I think The Flash was pretty good, has a lot of heart, has some dumb moments. Not the comedy wasn't the best at times, and the CGI was pretty terrible. But I don't think this movie deserves the hate or the love that it gets. I think it's just an 8 out of 10, a solid superhero movie. Coming in number 4, Wonder Woman. To me, this movie is pretty good as well. The thing that really drags this movie down is that final act, which is pretty unbearable, really tough to watch. The majority of this movie is pretty good though. It's really good at times, has some great directing moments, great visuals. I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I like her chemistry with Steve Trevor. The villain was alright, but yeah, pretty good superhero movie. Not one of the best like some people say, but it's pretty good. Coming in number 3, Man of Steel. Man of Steel, to me, is the best Superman movie of all time. And I view this movie as pretty good with some really great moments. So the fact that this is the best Superman movie so far is just sad, because that's how bad Superman movies have been. Sorry, I'm just not a fan of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Brandon Routh Superman sucked. Superman on TV has been done great though, and animated and live action. Smallville, Superman Lois, Superman the Animated Series, all great stuff for Superman. But on the movie side of things, Superman has been done dirty. But with that all being said though, this is a pretty good movie. A unique take on the Superman story, and I do like the Christopher Nolan aspects of this movie. I could see a lot of it. I honestly wish this was its own thing, like its own Superman trilogy that did not spawn off a whole DC universe. I think this movie, if anything, could have been connected to the Dark Knight trilogy, because I feel like Man of Steel is like in some ways like it's a realistic take on Superman, similar to how the Dark Knight was like a realistic take on Batman. This movie tells a story of like, what if someone that's super powerful, that's not human, came to Earth, like how would Earth handle that? And how would Superman feel like everyone viewing him as a god and an alien? All that was done really well. I love the suit in this movie as well. General Zod was a great villain, probably one of the best DCEU villains, maybe the best. The only thing I didn't really like was the way Jonathan Kent died. The way he was portrayed, I wasn't the biggest fan of. And I think this movie does have some pacing issues. It can be a bit boring at times. Also, Superman was a little too over-destructive in my opinion. But the action scenes were great though. I love the action scenes. Besides it being too destructive at times, I think there was some good hand-to-hand combat between Superman and Zod. So yeah, overall the best Superman movie. It's a pretty good movie. Probably Zack Snyder's best movie all time as well. Coming in number 2, Shazam. Now for me, this movie and the movie that's in first, they're like pretty close. I think I would both rate them an 8.5 out of 10. Both almost great superhero movies. And this movie has a lot of great moments. I think Zachary Levi as Shazam is great. Billy Batson, great. All the characters have pretty good chemistry with one another. The fact that this movie takes place in Philly is great. I just loved seeing a superhero movie that takes place in Philadelphia. I'm biased towards Philadelphia. Also, I'm biased towards the director of this movie as well. But it's not the reason why it's number 2. I genuinely think this is an almost great superhero movie. I think the villain was pretty good as well. And yeah, just a lot of positives. I think the only negatives I would have is the movie's a little too much with the comedy at times. I don't think the comedy always works. Wish the movie was a bit more serious at times. Also love the stuff with Billy Batson and his mom as well. But yeah, almost great, and it's the second best DCEU movie in my opinion. And coming in at number 1, The Suicide Squad. This movie is just the best made DCEU movie in my opinion. It has really good characters. They all have great chemistry. The comedy is pretty darn good in this movie. I loved seeing James Gunn unfiltered vision by MCU, like holding him back a bit. This is James Gunn unfiltered. It's like we're really seeing the mind of James Gunn, and it's just great. I just have a lot of praise for this movie. The way Harley Quinn done in this movie was great as well. Probably the best Harley Quinn appearance. Only negatives I have with this movie is it can be a bit stupid at times. Comedy does go a little too far at times, but most of the time, to me, the comedy is great. The movie pulls on the heartstrings a bit. Plot twist being revealed was great as well, like with the thing with Peacemaker. And I get why this movie isn't for everyone, but yeah, almost great superhero movie. It's the best of the DCEU in my opinion. So that's my list, and it's just kind of sad looking at it, like how most of the DCEU movies, to me, and I'm sure for many other people too, are not that good. This is not a good franchise. What a dysfunctional mess of a 10 years Warner Brothers has done with the DCEU. We could just only hope that the DCEU could be somewhat coherent and functional. I just don't have any trust with Warner Brothers anymore. I really just don't. I'm tired of hoping, and I gotta see results. I gotta see that they're not gonna mess with James Gunn's vision that I think could be pretty badass. So far, James Gunn has said all the right things and has done a great job casting his universe. I think they have a great Superman. They have a great Lex Luthor. If Warner Brothers doesn't mess with James Gunn's vision, it could be something really special. I think DC does have the potential to be on the rise of superhero movies, because MCU is just not learning from their mistakes. They're making formulaic movies with stupid jokes all the time, and it's just their whole universe is a mess right now. I think James Gunn knows what the problem is with the superhero genre right now. Everything should not be feeling the same. Hopefully James Gunn can apply to his DC universe like all the things people want from superhero movies right now. I hope James Gunn knows what's needed for the superhero genre. But yeah, glad the DCEU is over, I guess. What a mess. What a freaking mess.